5 hours after my divorce became official, my ex-husband walked into a luxury real estate office with the woman he swore was just a friend. By midnight, every major account he controlled was frozen. He thought I was being jealous. He thought I was bitter. He thought I couldn't stand seeing him move on so quickly. What he didn't know was that I wasn't trying to stop him from buying a house with another woman. I was trying to stop him from buying that house with money he had hidden from me during our divorce. My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 34 years old, and until the day my marriage officially ended, I genuinely believed the worst part was already over. I had survived 10 months of lawyers, arguments, financial disclosures, late-night crying, and sitting across from a man I once loved while we divided 14 years of memories into categories. Discard. When the judge signed the final order that Friday morning in downtown Chicago, I felt empty rather than relieved. My ex-husband, Ryan, stood beside his attorney in a dark gray suit. He didn't look at me. Maybe that should have hurt. Instead, I watched him sign the last document and thought about our wedding day. Ryan had cried when I walked down the aisle. He once told me losing me would destroy him. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. Our marriage hadn't always been miserable. That was what made everything harder. We met when I was 21. I was working part-time at a bookstore while finishing college. Ryan came in looking for a business management book and somehow stayed 40 minutes talking to me. He was ambitious, funny, confident. Everything I wasn't back then. I grew up in a quiet middle-class family in Ohio. My father was an electrician. My mother worked in a dentist's office. Money wasn't something we had much of, but honesty was treated like religion. My father used to say, "You can recover from being broke. It's much harder to recover from becoming someone you can't respect." Ryan came from a completely different world. His parents owned several small commercial properties. His father, Charles, talked about money at dinner the way other families talked about weather. When Ryan and I started dating, his mother, Diane, made it clear she thought I was temporary. She eventually warmed up to me. Or at least I thought she did. Years later, I realized she simply became better at hiding her opinion. Ryan and I built a good life. He launched a property management company. I became a senior account director at an advertising firm. We bought a townhouse. We traveled. We talked about having children but kept delaying it because Ryan was always chasing one more business goal. Then, 3 years before the divorce, he changed. He became protective of his phone. He started taking business calls outside. He opened accounts I didn't recognize. Whenever I asked questions, he smiled and kissed my forehead. "You worry too much, Lauren." Maybe some of you listening have heard that sentence before. And if you're watching this from somewhere in the United States or anywhere else in the world, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I never imagined my private divorce would turn into the kind of story strangers would one day hear. The woman who eventually became his new girlfriend was named Madison Cole. Ryan introduced her to me 18 months before we separated. This is Madison. She's helping with acquisitions. She was 29, polished, beautiful, and always slightly too comfortable around my husband. The first time she came to our house for a business dinner, she already knew which whiskey Ryan liked. Ryan noticed me noticing. Later that night, he accused me of being insecure. "Madison works with me. I didn't accuse you of anything. You didn't have to." That became our pattern. Ask questions. Ryan made me feel guilty for asking. Then I discovered hotel charges on a company credit card. He said they were for client meetings. I found deleted messages. He said the storage on his phone was full. Then one evening, Madison texted him while he was showering. "Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore." I remember standing in our bedroom staring at the screen. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I simply felt cold. When Ryan walked out of the bathroom, I held up his phone. His face changed. That was the moment our marriage ended. Not legally, but emotionally. He admitted the affair. He said it had lasted 4 months. I would later learn that was another lie. During divorce negotiations, Ryan fought over everything. Townhouse. investments, furniture, even a painting my mother gave us for our anniversary. But whenever my attorney, Rebecca Shaw, asked about his business finances, Ryan insisted things were bad. The company has debt. Several investments failed. Cash flow is down. His records seemed to support it. Eventually, I accepted a settlement that gave me the townhouse equity, part of our retirement accounts, and a cash payment. It wasn't everything I wanted, but I wanted freedom more than another year of fighting. On the morning the divorce became final, Ryan finally looked at me outside the courtroom. "I hope someday you understand this was best for both of us." I almost laughed. Instead, I said, "Take care of yourself." Then I walked away. 5 hours later, at 3:42 p.m., my phone rang. It was Rebecca. "Lauren, are you sitting down?" My stomach tightened. "What happened? Did you know Ryan was buying another house?" Froze. "What?" "One of my contacts just called. Ryan submitted an offer this afternoon on a property in Lake Forest." I stared out my office window. "How much?" $2.3 million. I actually thought I had misheard her. Ryan told the court his business was struggling. "I know." "He said he didn't have liquid cash." "I know." My heart started pounding. "Who is he buying it with?" Rebecca hesitated. "Madison." For a second, the affair was what hurt. 5 hours. He couldn't even wait one full day. Then Rebecca said something that made the betrayal feel much bigger. "The purchase is supposed to be mostly cash." I stood up. "How?" "That's what I want to know." She emailed me a preliminary document connected to the transaction. Opened it. Ryan Mitchell, Madison Cole. And beneath their names was a company I had never seen before. Northstar Holdings LLC. I whispered the name aloud. Then my stomach dropped. Because 3 months earlier, while sorting old tax records, I had seen that exact company name on a bank transfer Ryan insisted was nothing more than a bookkeeping error. The transfer was for $640,000. Called Rebecca immediately. "That company existed during our marriage." Silence. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Lauren, listen carefully. Don't contact Ryan." "Why?" "Because if what you're telling me is true, he may have concealed marital assets during the divorce." I looked back at the purchase paperwork. My sadness disappeared. Something colder replaced it. "What can we do?" Rebecca took a breath. "We can ask the court for emergency relief and try to stop him from moving the money." I stared at Ryan's name on the screen. 5 hours after divorcing me. He thought he was starting his new life. He had no idea I was about to reopen the war. Rebecca moved faster than I had ever seen her move during the entire divorce. Within 40 minutes, she had me on a video call with a forensic accountant named Daniel Price. Daniel was in his late 40s, wore rectangular glasses, and spoke with the calm voice of someone who had spent years watching wealthy people make very stupid financial decisions. He shared his screen. "Lauren, I need you to tell me everything you remember about Northstar Holdings. It was on a transfer." "When?" "About 3 months ago. I was sorting through old tax paperwork." "How much?" $640,000. Daniel nodded. "And Ryan's explanation?" "He said it was an internal transfer connected to one of his properties." "Did he provide supporting documents?" I asked him. "And?" "He told me his accountant had already handled it." Daniel looked at Rebecca. She immediately understood. "We never received anything for Northstar during discovery." My stomach tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," Rebecca said, "that if Northstar existed during the marriage and Ryan had an ownership interest in it, he may have been required to disclose it." Lawyers loved that word. But I could hear the anger underneath Rebecca's professional tone. Daniel began searching records available to him. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the same wood grain Ryan and I had chosen together 7 years earlier. I remembered us arguing over the color. He wanted darker. I wanted something warm. We compromised. Funny how marriage can involve hours of negotiation over a kitchen table and almost no honest conversation about the things that actually destroy you. Daniel stopped typing. There it is. My pulse jumped. What? North Star Holdings LLC was formed 22 months ago. I did the math instantly. That was long before we separated. Who owns it? That's the interesting part. He enlarged a filing. The registered agent was an attorney I didn't recognize. The mailing address belonged to a commercial office building. No Ryan. No Madison. Nothing obvious. Daniel leaned back. This structure isn't unusual by itself. But with the timing and the transfer, I'd want the banking records. Rebecca said. Can we get them? If we establish enough reason to believe assets were concealed, yes. I felt anger moving through me. Ryan had spent 10 months acting exhausted by the divorce. He complained about legal bills. He told me I was being unreasonable when I asked for more financial records. One night, during mediation, he looked across the conference table and said, "How much money do you need before you stop punishing me?" I had cried in the bathroom afterward. Now I wondered whether he had been hiding hundreds of thousands of dollars while accusing me of greed. Rebecca's voice interrupted my thoughts. Lauren, I need you to search anything you legally still have access to. Old tax records, joint statements, emails sent to shared accounts. Don't access anything that belongs solely to Ryan. I understand. For the next 2 hours, my dining room became an investigation room. Boxes came out of closets. Old statements covered the table. I searched our shared email account for North Star. Nothing. Then I searched 640,000. One result appeared. It was an email from our former accountant, sent almost 2 years earlier. When, per your request, the funds have been transferred to the new entity. Lauren's signature will not be required because the source account is business held. Please confirm how you want this reflected before year-end reporting. I stopped breathing. Rebecca. What? I found something. I forwarded the email. She called immediately. This is very important. Does it prove he hid money? Not by itself. Again, not by itself. But it gives us something concrete to investigate. The next morning, Rebecca filed an emergency motion asking the court to preserve certain disputed assets until their source could be determined. The judge did not freeze everything Ryan owned. This wasn't some dramatic movie where one phone call erased his access to every dollar. But the court temporarily restricted transfers from specific accounts connected to North Star while the matter was reviewed. That was enough. At 11:16 a.m., Ryan called me. I watched his name flash across my phone. Ryan. I let it ring. Again. Then a text arrived. What did you do? I stared at it. Another message followed. My funds are locked. Lauren, answer the phone. I didn't. 5 minutes later, Madison called. I had never given her my number. That told me how frantic they were. I declined. Then Diane, Ryan's mother, called. Course she did. I almost ignored that one too. Instead, something made me answer. Hello. What have you done to my son? No hello. No hesitation. I filed a legal request concerning possible hidden marital assets. That is ridiculous. Then Ryan should have no trouble explaining the money. You have always been obsessed with his success. Actually smiled. Diane had spent years pretending to like me, but stress had stripped away the performance. This isn't about his success. You couldn't keep your marriage, so now you want to destroy his future. My hand tightened around the phone. The divorce was finalized yesterday. Exactly. It is over. Leave him alone. I plan to. Then release his money. It isn't my decision anymore. She went silent. What do you mean? The court is involved. That frightened her. I heard it immediately. Her voice became quieter. Lauren, you need to be careful. Is that a threat? No. Was. Advice. I ended the call. Then I sat there wondering why Diane sounded nervous. Not angry. Nervous. That afternoon Rebecca called again. We received a response from Ryan's attorney. And he claims North Star is separate business property and that you knew about it. I didn't. I know. He's lying. We're going to make him prove it. Then Rebecca said something unexpected. There's another issue. My stomach sank. What now? Ryan claims the $640,000 originally came from his father. I frowned. Charles. Yes. That doesn't make sense. Why? Because Charles told us during mediation that he hadn't given Ryan any large gifts during the marriage. Rebecca went quiet. I remembered the deposition. Charles had been asked directly whether he had transferred significant money to his son. He said no. Not recently. Not during our marriage. If Ryan was telling the truth now, then Charles had lied. If Charles had told the truth then, Ryan was lying now. Either way, somebody was in trouble. That evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. There was no subject line. Only one sentence. Ryan didn't hide just $640,000. My heart started pounding. Below the sentence was an attachment. Spreadsheet. Opened it. Rows of transfers appeared. North Star Holdings. Lakeview Capital. Marcy Consulting. Amounts ranging from $20,000 to nearly $500,000. The bottom was a total. $2,870,000. I stared at the screen. Almost $3 million. Then I noticed the dates. The transfers had started more than a year before Ryan claimed his affair with Madison began. And several payments had gone directly to an account with her initials. What would you have done if you discovered your ex may have hidden nearly $3 million during your divorce? Would you confront him immediately, or stay quiet and let the evidence speak for itself? And who do you think secretly sent Lauren that spreadsheet? Share your thoughts in the comments. I stared at the spreadsheet until the numbers stopped looking like numbers. $2,870,000. I read the total again. Then again. My first thought wasn't about money. It was about humiliation. During mediation, Ryan had looked me in the eye and acted wounded because I asked questions about his finances. He had told everyone his company was struggling. He had complained that legal fees were draining him. He had even suggested selling our townhouse because he claimed he needed liquidity. Meanwhile, millions of dollars may have been moving through companies I had never heard of. Called Rebecca immediately. Don't forward this to anyone else, she said after I explained. I already sent it to you. That's fine. Anything else? No. Good. Can we use it? Maybe. First, we need to know where it came from. I looked at the anonymous email. There's no name. Could be a whistleblower. Could be someone trying to manipulate you. Could even be fabricated. My stomach sank. You think Ryan sent it? I think we assume nothing. That was why I hired Rebecca. I wanted answers. She wanted proof. Daniel joined the call 15 minutes later. He examined the spreadsheet and immediately noticed details I had missed. Internal account codes, transfer dates, property abbreviations, bank reference numbers. This looks like something generated from accounting records, he said. So it's real. I didn't say that, course. But whoever made this knew how Ryan's business is organized. Daniel highlighted several transfers. These payments to MRC Consulting are especially interesting. Why? The entity was formed around the same time as North Star. Who owns it? He searched, then stopped. You're not going to like this. My chest tightened. Madison. No. Daniel turned his screen toward us. The name listed on a public filing was Diane Mitchell, Ryan's mother. I leaned back in my chair. Diane. Rebecca immediately started taking notes. Daniel continued. MRC could be completely legitimate. We need records before reaching conclusions. I remembered Diane's phone call. You need to be careful. She hadn't sounded nervous because her son's money was frozen. She was nervous because she was involved. Suddenly, years of small moments returned to me. Diane asking detailed questions about Ryan's company. Diane encouraging him to keep business accounts separate from marriage. Diane telling me during one Thanksgiving dinner that smart families protected wealth before outsiders started feeling entitled to it. At the time I thought she was being insulting. Maybe she had been giving me a warning. 2 days later, Ryan's attorney demanded that the restrictions be lifted. Rebecca refused. Hearing was scheduled. That was when Ryan finally showed up at my house. It was nearly 8 at night. I saw his car through the window. For 1 second, muscle memory took over. Ryan coming home. Ryan walking up the path. Ryan reaching for the door. Then I remembered. It wasn't his home anymore. I opened the door but stayed behind it. You shouldn't be here. His face looked exhausted. Lauren, please. Call my attorney. I'm not talking to Rebecca. I'm talking to my wife. Ex-wife. He closed his eyes. Fine. My ex-wife. What do you want? To fix this. I almost laughed. You had 10 months. This is different. Yes. Now your money is involved. His jaw tightened. I didn't hide anything from you. Then why is nearly $3 million moving through companies nobody disclosed? His face changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. You know about that. That was enough. I stared at him. So it's real. Ryan realized his mistake immediately. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. He stepped closer. I held up my hand. Stay there. He stopped. Lauren, business money isn't automatically marital money. I know. Some of those transfers belong to investors. Then prove it. I will. Great. He looked toward the street, then lowered his voice. You don't understand what you're interfering with. There it was again. That warning. Diane had used almost the same words. What am I interfering with, Ryan? He rubbed his forehead. Things are complicated. Apparently, North Star was created for acquisitions. During our marriage. Yes. And you didn't disclose it. Because I don't own it. Froze. What? I manage certain transactions through it, but it isn't mine. Whose is it? He hesitated. That's confidential. Actually laughed. You came to my house asking me to help unlock money connected to a company whose owner you won't name? It involves private investors. Then go explain that to the judge. He stepped closer again. Lauren, Madison could lose the house. There it was. The sentence I would remember forever. No. My business could collapse. No. My employees could suffer. No. You misunderstood. Madison could lose the house. I stared at the man I had married. You came here because you're worried your girlfriend might not get her mansion. It's not like that. You took her house hunting 5 hours after our divorce. His expression hardened. We were separated for almost a year. That wasn't the question. She's been through a lot too. I felt something inside me detach. Maybe that was the moment I truly stopped loving him. Not when I discovered the affair. Not when he lied during mediation. But when he stood on my porch and asked me to protect the future he had built with the woman who helped destroy our marriage. I whispered, "Get off my property. Lauren." Now. He stared at me for several seconds. Then his face changed. The pleading disappeared. You think you're going to get some huge payday from this? I said nothing. You're not. That's for the court to decide. You always hated that I was more successful than you. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. No, Ryan. I hated that I trusted you. Close the door. My knees weakened the second the lock clicked. I leaned against the wall and cried. Not because I wanted him back. Because I finally understood that the man outside wasn't the man I had spent 14 years believing he was. The next morning Rebecca called. We found the sender. I sat upright. Who? The anonymous email came through a forwarding service, but Daniel traced identifying details in the spreadsheet. My heartbeat accelerated. And it appears to have come from someone inside Ryan's company. Who? Rebecca paused. His former chief financial officer, Mark Collins. I remembered Mark. Quiet. Professional. Ryan fired him 6 months before our separation and said he was incompetent. Why would Mark send it to me? We asked him. You spoke to him? Yes. And what did he say? Rebecca's voice became serious. He says Ryan fired him because Mark refused to falsify records. My skin went cold. Falsify what? Business losses. I couldn't speak. Rebecca continued. According to Mark, Ryan began moving assets before you ever knew about Madison. How long before? Almost 2 years. That meant Ryan hadn't hidden money because our divorce became ugly. He had prepared for divorce while still coming home every night pretending we were married. Then Rebecca delivered the part that made my blood run cold. Mark also says Madison wasn't just involved in the affair. I tightened my grip on the phone. What was she involved in? He claims Madison helped create the companies used to move the money. What would you have done if you discovered your husband had been preparing financially for divorce years before admitting the marriage was over? And if his new girlfriend helped hide the money, would you see her as part of the betrayal too? Share your thoughts in the comments. The idea that Madison had helped Ryan hide money changed the entire shape of the betrayal. Until that moment, I had separated the affair from the finances. Madison was the woman he cheated with. Ryan was the man who lied about money. Now those two betrayals were starting to look like one plan. Rebecca arranged a formal interview with Mark Collins. I wasn't required to attend, but she allowed me to listen by video. Mark looked older than I remembered. He had always been one of those quiet people who blended into business meetings. Gray suit, careful voice, never interested in office gossip. Ryan used to call him boring. Now I wondered if boring had simply meant honest. Mark began slowly. Ryan started asking me to restructure several accounts about 2 years before the separation. Rebecca asked, did he explain why? He said he wanted greater privacy. What did that mean? At first, I assumed investor confidentiality. Mark paused. Then he asked me to categorize profitable holdings as liabilities. My stomach tightened. Why? Rebecca asked. So the company would appear less valuable. There it was. Not an accident. Not poor accounting. Intent. Mark continued. He also asked me to move funds through newly created entities. North Star. Yes. MRC Consulting. Yes. What was Madison Cole's involvement? Mark rubbed his hands together. She helped organize documents. My mouth went dry. She was working directly with Ryan. Yes. When did that begin? Mark checked a file. About 21 months before Lauren filed for divorce. Felt sick. Ryan had claimed his affair lasted 4 months. 21 months meant Madison was involved long before I found that message on his phone. Rebecca leaned forward. Did you know they were romantically involved? Mark hesitated. I suspected. Why? They traveled together frequently. Business trips. They were recorded that way. That answer hurt. I remembered every conference, every late flight, every time Ryan called from some hotel room and said he missed me. I had believed him. Mark continued. Then I found expenses that didn't match business activity. What kind? Jewelry. Resort stays. Furniture. Furniture. Something about that word hit differently. Jewelry could be a gift. Hotels could be an affair. Furniture suggested a life. Where was the furniture delivered? Rebecca asked. Mark gave an address. I recognized it immediately. Madison's apartment. Closed my eyes. They hadn't simply been sneaking around. Ryan had been helping build her home while telling me our business finances were tight. Rebecca asked the question I couldn't. Did Ryan ever mention divorce? Mark nodded. Several times. My eyes opened. When? The first conversation I remember was approximately 18 months before separation. I stared at the screen. 18 months. During that period, Ryan and I had attended my sister's wedding. We had taken anniversary photos. We had discussed remodeling the kitchen. He had bought me diamond earrings for Christmas. And somewhere inside that same year, he was apparently talking about divorce at work. What did he say? Rebecca asked. Mark looked uncomfortable. He wanted to know what assets could be protected if the marriage ended. I pressed my hand against my chest. The room suddenly felt too small. Rebecca glanced toward my camera. Do you need a break, Lauren? No. My voice sounded distant. Keep going. Mark explained that he initially believed Ryan was asking hypothetical questions. Then the requests became specific. Could assets be transferred? Could ownership be moved? Could certain businesses be valued differently? Eventually, Mark refused to sign off on a set of financial statements. Ryan fired him 2 weeks later. He told the staff I was making mistakes, Mark said. Were you? No. Why didn't you report him then? Mark looked down. I was scared. That surprised me. Ryan threatened you. Not directly. He paused. He told me people who interfered with his family's business had a way of losing opportunities. I thought about Diane's warning. Be careful. This was bigger than one dishonest husband. Maybe the whole family had spent years using fear to protect money. The emergency hearing happened 3 days later. Ryan arrived with 2 attorneys. Madison came too. She wore a cream blazer and sat directly behind him. When I walked into the courtroom, our eyes met. She looked away first. For once, I didn't feel jealous. Felt curious. What had Ryan promised her? A house. A marriage. A life built from money he assumed I would never discover. Rebecca presented the timeline. The companies. The transfers. Mark's testimony. The inconsistencies in Ryan's disclosures. Ryan's attorney argued that the funds were business assets, investor capital, and family property. Then the judge asked Ryan directly, do you have any ownership interest, beneficial interest, or control over North Star Holdings? Ryan answered, no. Rebecca immediately stood. Your Honor, we have documentation indicating otherwise. One document was entered into evidence. Daniel had obtained it through records requested after the emergency motion. It was a banking authorization form. North Star Holdings. Primary authorized controller. Ryan Mitchell. The courtroom went silent. Ryan's attorney whispered urgently to him. Madison's face changed. The judge stared over her glasses. Mr. Mitchell, would you like to reconsider your answer? Ryan swallowed. I manage the account. That was not my question. He looked toward his attorney. The judge repeated it. Do you have a beneficial interest in this company? Finally, Ryan said. Yes. My heart pounded. Rebecca didn't celebrate. She simply wrote something down. The judge ordered the disputed funds to remain restricted pending a full forensic accounting. Then she expanded the order to cover additional accounts connected to the newly discovered entities. Ryan turned toward me. His face was furious. But I didn't look away. After the hearing, Madison followed me into the hallway. Lauren. Rebecca immediately stepped beside me. Madison raised both hands. I'm not here to fight. I stared at her. Then what do you want? She looked toward Ryan, who was still inside with his attorneys. I need to tell you something, Rebecca said. Anything you say should go through counsel. Madison shook her head. He lied to me too. I almost laughed. About what? She swallowed. The money. I crossed my arms. What did he tell you? That everything was already settled. That the money in North Star came from his family. Did you help create the company? Her face went pale. I signed documents. My stomach tightened. What documents? I didn't understand all of them. Rebecca stepped closer. Madison, you need your own attorney. I know. Her eyes filled with tears. Then she looked directly at me. There's something else. What? The Lake Forest house wasn't supposed to be in Ryan's name. I frowned. Whose name was it supposed to be in? Madison's lips trembled. Mine. I stared at her. Why? Because Ryan said nobody could touch it that way. The hallway seemed to disappear around me. This wasn't simply a new house after divorce. It was another hiding place. Then Madison reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. Ryan gave me copies of everything because he thought I'd never turn on him. Rebecca immediately said, "Do not hand that directly to Lauren." Madison gave it to her instead. "What's on it?" Rebecca asked. Madison looked toward the courtroom doors. "Counts, emails, property records." Then her voice dropped. "And a document Ryan said had to disappear before Lauren ever found it." My skin went cold. "What document?" Madison looked at me. "Something you signed while you were still married." I shook my head. "I don't know what you mean." "You wouldn't." Her eyes filled with fear. "Because according to Ryan, he changed it after you signed." The document Madison described turned out to be a property agreement. First, I didn't recognize it. Rebecca opened the file from the flash drive while I sat across from her in a conference room the next morning. The document had my signature at the bottom. Name. My handwriting. My initials on every page. But the version on the screen was not the version I remembered signing. I leaned closer. "What is this?" Rebecca's expression was grim. "It appears to be an amendment involving ownership rights in several investment properties." "I never agreed to this." "You signed something." "Yes, but not this." My hands started shaking. I remembered the day. Ryan had brought home a stack of documents almost 3 years earlier. He told me they were routine business papers connected to refinancing. I was cooking dinner. He placed little yellow tabs beside the signature lines. "Just sign these so I can get them back to the bank tomorrow." I trusted my husband, so I signed them. I never imagined he might later replace pages or alter terms. Daniel compared the file Madison provided with archived emails. By that afternoon he found an earlier version. The original document dealt only with refinancing consent. The later version added language suggesting I had waived certain claims to business interests. My stomach turned. He changed it. Rebecca didn't answer immediately. "The evidence strongly suggests alterations were made after your signature." I stared at the document. For months, Ryan had painted me as greedy, difficult, suspicious. Meanwhile, he had been planning around me while we were still sharing a bed. That hurt more than the affair. An affair could happen in moments of selfishness. This required patience, organization, intent. 2 weeks later, the court ordered a full reopening of the financial portions of our divorce. Ryan's accounts remained restricted while Daniel and a larger forensic team traced the transfers. They found more than I expected. Some money belonged legitimately to investors. Some belonged to Ryan's family business. But a significant portion had come from marital income, investment gains, and property proceeds that should have been disclosed. The final disputed amount was just over $1.9 million. Not the full $2.87 million. But far more than Ryan had admitted existed. Madison hired her own lawyer and cooperated. I never became her friend. Couldn't. She had known Ryan was married. She had helped him hide parts of their relationship. But I also learned Ryan had lied to her about the divorce timeline, the ownership of several accounts, and the legality of what she was signing. She wasn't innocent. But she wasn't the mastermind either. That belonged to Ryan. And, in some ways, Diane. MRC Consulting had received several transfers connected to the hidden structure. Diane claimed they were management fees. The records told a Messier story. Some were legitimate. Others had no clear business purpose. For the first time in years, Ryan's family turned on itself. Charles blamed Diane. Diane blamed Ryan. Ryan blamed his accountants. His attorneys blamed unclear documentation. Everybody suddenly had an explanation. Nobody had responsibility. I watched from a distance. That became important. I stopped needing to understand every excuse. The truth did not require everyone involved to admit it. Months passed. The Lake Forest house deal collapsed. Madison walked away from the purchase. Then, eventually she walked away from Ryan too. I found out through Rebecca. Part of me expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt nothing. That surprised me. For so long, I thought seeing Ryan lose what he chose over me would feel like justice. Didn't. Justice was quieter. It was sitting in Rebecca's office when she slid the revised settlement across the table. The agreement restored my share of the concealed marital assets, added penalties and legal costs, and corrected several property calculations from the original divorce. I looked at the final figure. It was substantial. But the number didn't make me emotional. What did was a paragraph near the end. It stated that the earlier financial settlement had been entered using materially incomplete disclosures. There it was. In plain language. Official. Documented. I had not imagined it. I had not been paranoid. I had not been greedy. I had been lied to. Ryan requested one private meeting before the revised agreement was finalized. I refused. Then he sent a letter through our attorneys. Rebecca asked if I wanted it. Almost said no. Then I changed my mind. Not because I wanted reconciliation. Because I wanted to know whether, after everything, he could finally tell the truth. The letter began. Lauren, I know there is no excuse for what I did. I stopped reading for a moment. That was already more accountability than I had heard from him in years. He admitted hiding money. He admitted lying about Madison. He admitted asking employees to make the company appear weaker financially. He said fear had taken over. Fear of losing the business. Fear of losing money. Fear that I would punish him for the affair. Then came the sentence that mattered most. I convinced myself that because I was afraid of losing everything, I had the right to deceive you first. I read that line 3 times. That was Ryan. Maybe that had always been Ryan. He didn't see betrayal as betrayal when he could rename it protection. I finished the letter. He apologized. I believed the apology was real. I still didn't answer. Forgiveness and access are not the same thing. The final hearing happened almost a year after our first divorce judgment. Ryan sat across the courtroom again. This time he looked at me. I looked back. There was no rage left. No love either. Just recognition. The judge approved the corrected settlement. When I walked outside, Rebecca smiled. How do you feel? Thought about it. Finished. Not victorious. Finished. That night I drove home alone. The townhouse had been sold months earlier. I had bought a smaller place near the lake. The first thing I did when I moved in was buy a kitchen table. No compromise. No argument. I chose exactly the one I wanted. A year later I started my own consulting agency. Not because I needed to prove anything to Ryan. Because after years of questioning my instincts, I wanted a life where I trusted my own decisions again. I went to therapy. I traveled with my sister. I stopped checking whether Ryan and Madison were still together. I stopped searching his name online. Healing arrived when I became less interested in whether he suffered and more interested in whether I was peaceful. That was the part nobody had warned me about. Revenge keeps you facing backward. Boundaries let you turn around. 5 hours after our divorce, Ryan took another woman house hunting. He thought he was already safely on the other side of our marriage. He thought the paperwork had buried every secret. Instead, that house purchase exposed everything he had worked so hard to hide. Freezing those accounts was never about stopping him from moving on. He was free to move on. What he wasn't free to do was finance his new life with money he had concealed while convincing me there was nothing left to divide. In the end, I didn't take his future away. I simply reclaimed the part of mine he had tried to hide. Have you ever experienced betrayal like this? What would you have done if you learned your spouse had been secretly preparing for divorce and hiding assets while still pretending everything was normal? Would you confront them immediately? Or quietly gather evidence first? Share your story and your thoughts in the comments.